speaker, Whaea Lynda. Oh, aroa mai. Our guest speaker, Whaea Lynda, is the matriarch of our Whare Wānanga. She is a kaiawhina of Te Noho Kotahitanga Marae. She supports both staff and students in sessions of wellbeing through a Māori lens. She provides guardianship and mentoring. She facilitates workshops in Karanga Wānanga, and she is the first voice that you will hear on our marae. Whaea Lynda, she is a grandmother to all of our students at Unitec. Nō reira, e aku nui, e aku rahi. Please send your virtual aroha to Whaea Lynda, our guest speaker this evening. Tēnā koe, Whaea Lynda.
Kia ora, Whaea.
Kia ora mai tātou e te whānau. Te whānau I hui zui mai. I te ahi pōnei o te whānau o Wairaka. Tēnā rā tātou. Ka huri au kia rātou. Ko wehe atu ki te rungarawa, ki te papa o Jenny Lee, ki te mama o Papa Hau hoki. Kia kōrua, koutou te hunga I moi. Moi mai, moi mai, moi mai rā. Ki wairu atu ki te ringa o te atua. Hoki atu rā, hoki atu rā. Hoki a tātou, te hunga ora. Actually, with the student. Mōkau ki runga, tamaki ki raro, manga tōtō ki Wainganui, he mihi ki te ari hau pai mārire ki a rātou. Ko whare o rino rātou, ko maungaroa. Ko te puke hōki oi, ngā maunga, ko waikawau, rātou, ko marakopa, ko mangapū, ngā awa, ko tainui te waka, ko Ngāti Mania Poto te iwi, ko Ngāti Kino Haku, rātou, Ngāti Te Kanawa, Ngāti Pēhi, ngā hapū.
Kia ora.
Ko Mara, ko miru miru rātou, ko ōparure,
Te marae.
ko te tawa piko, ko te tawa piko he papakainga, engari ko miru miru ko ōparure ngā marae, ko miru miru ko waipātoto tuatahi, waipātoto tuarua, ngā whare, ko miru miru I te awatea te whare kai, anō hoki, ko te tihi o te ao marama, te whare kai hoki. Ko Lynda toki ahau, ara ko tui kite ahau hoki. What defines me? Ko rangi nui e tui honei. Tēnā koe, Diane. Ko papatua nuku e takatua ki nei.
Kia ora.
This is a photo of our tunnel at Waikawau. And when you grow up with these types of tohu, are you able to see that? I've kind of lost it on my screen.
Yeah, there it is, Whaea.
Hapai. And so I just want to talk about our tanu at Waikawau. When you grow up with these types of tohu, surrounded by your tupuna, who talks to you about what it means, ko papatua nuku e taka tōnei. And when you walk through our tunnel, it's like walking between the legs of our fire. Tēnā koe, Diane. And you learn about what it means to be Māori from their perspective. And so walking through our tunnel at Waikawau, there's a lot of emotions that happen when we walk through our taonga. Thank you, Diane. And you get to hear these kōrero from their perspective, from the perspective of our tupuna, our karawa, our kuia. And as children, you know, our voices still remain in this taonga of our laughter, of our squeals, of our karanga, as we ran through here to get to the end. Tēnā koe, Diane. And to get to the end of our tunnel, we are introduced to the sea of life. Tēnā koe, Diane. And sometimes our sea of life rages. You know, it's no mistake that we are predominantly water, made up of water, and that water is salty. You know, and our students will get to hear this from me when I talk about, when I bring them through the pōwhiri process and what it's like to congregate at the waharua as a pool of water who arrives there. And when the rest of your classmates arrive, you end up as a tide of salt water that progresses onto the ātea, to the karanga. So whānau, welcome to our moana at Waikawau. Tēnā koe, Diane. This is where we come to when we leave our urupa. When we say farewell to our loved ones, we come here and our kuia will strip down and walk out into that water. And this is where we come to whakawātia. Tēnā koe, Diane. And so this is where my relationship with Tangaroa and Hine Moana begins, is through here. And hearing the kōrero, hearing the karakia of our tupuna through our tunnel, and the oro, hearing the oro oro of karanga through our tunnel that brings us out to the sea of life and everything that that stands for. What it is that sometimes rages within us is that this way also has the ability to be calm within us. Tēnā koe, Diane. And the many different aspects of the day. How fortunate are we to have a place like this? This is where we call home, my whānau. And this is where I want all our mokopuna to have a relationship, as should all mokopuna have a relationship with their moana, with their landmarks, to understand what it is that defines them as well. Tēnā koe, Diane. These are some of the landmarks that I'm always looking out for in my travels back to our tupuna whenua. These are the things that I acknowledge. And you can clearly see the face of our karaua there on the cliff face. I look for his mihi when I come past. Things of nature reveal themselves if you have the relationship with the taonga of nature. Even at Te Whare Wānanga o Wairaka, that whenua is full of rongoa, full of medicine, and even those taonga will actually allow you to see who they really are. We have a ara kohatu there. And when you are connected to your place and space, those things often reveal the essence of who they really are. Tēnā koe, Dai. You know, 8 years ago, I went back to one of our moana at Waikawau, and there was no sand there. I don't know how the sand was removed, but there was no sand on our beach. My mokopuna was sitting on stone. And so, how did that make me feel? I felt as if somebody had stolen a part of me. And so I took karanga. Kia tāwhiri, mauria mai ngā one pū o Waikawau. Kia tangaroa. Whānau, the last time I went, which was the end of last year, the sand is now back at our moana. Tēnā koe, Diane. The marks I wear on my face, my moko kauai, resembles the marks on my beach. Tēnā koe, Dai. when you learn about what it is to have a puna that flows into the river of life, that goes out to the sea of life, especially told by your tupuna, your kuia, from their perspective. It's very easy to understand our whakatauki and our whakatauaki that have been around mai rano. Tēnā koe, Diane. This is part of my whānau. They are my support system. That was taken at Maniaroa Marae in Mōkau at one of our reunions. Tēnā koe, Diane. And that's what we look out to. From up here, we can see whales jumping. Certain times of the years when the whales come through, especially the small ones, we see them jumping out of the water. Tēnā koe, Diane. This is the Mōkau River. Mōkau ki runga, tamaki ki raro. That big rock out there, is, we call it the flower pot. It used to be covered in flax and flowers, and to us it kind of always looked like a boat. But these are our landmarks. On a very clear day, we could see Taranaki in the distance. Tēnā koe, Diane.
Okay.
Anai te awa marokupa. And it reminds me of a tuna. From up here, we can also see whales jumping. My mokopuna have seen whales jumping from up here. Tēnā koe, Diane. This is our whare, mirumiru I te pō. That kuia that stands there is Rua Pūtahanga no Taranaki. These are we grow up with the kōrero of all these tupuna. That shape our thinking. Tēnā koe, Diane. This is Waikawau. This was my first home. And from the top of the hill, you can clearly see our fire and the shape of our fire in the distance. Tēnā koe, Diane. Aye. And this is the road through our gorge. Why have I got a photo of a road there? It's about when you know where you come from, It's about also knowing where you're going. Tēnā koe, Diane. Our tonga of nature are beautiful. They don't just inspire me, they educate me. Tēnā koe, Diane. I like this because for me, my path was very clearly signposted. Tēnā koe, Diane. Part of that signposting is the type of education that I got as a mokopuna in Wānanga. And at the age of 3, you were old enough to become politically involved. And so at the age of 3, I was taken by my karaua to political hui, to Wānanga at his site. And at the age of 7, I was contracted by his mother to carry on her work. And I was paid in full by the time I was 13. The payment consisted of 2 kete whakairo, a piu-piu, and a korowai to fit the 7-year-old. Tēnā koe, Diane. That's me at WOMAD a few years ago. I want to bring up the fact that I was contracted by my tupuna kuia, my great-grandmother. And that was her little whare. Miro miro I te pō. That was her whare. To carry on their mahi, they educate you, they teach you, they guide you within their practices, and then they contract you to carry on their mahi. And she told me that when I reach my kuiatanga, I will be in tertiary. And when I reached my kuiatanga, I was in tertiary. I was at Wairaka. You know, when you're 7, the last thing you want to do is do what you've seen your nanny do. And I wanted to drive a logging truck. And so she told me she will get my truck. And my grandfather said to me, Moko, it may not necessarily be the way you think it was. And I have to say, whānau, when I'm at Ngā Kaumāhaki, looking at all those logs, sitting at my desk out the back, I feel like I am the driver of that truck, and I have the absolute best logs in the world. It's no coincidence that my path took me to Unitec. When you grow up surrounded by tupuna, and whānau, a lot of those ones lived into their, they were over 100. You know, we had a kuia who was 119. Another one we knew is Nani Ngā, she was 121. Well, I believe she was 121, but I've since heard from others who said she could have been over 130 because their nannies recollect going to her 90th birthday maybe 3 times, her 100th birthday more than once, her 110th birthday more than once. And so they have a different way of looking at the world compared to us today. And it all comes back to the whenua. And I have to say, the whenua at Unitec is amazing. Like I said, it's full of rongoa. And it deserves to be looked after. The rongoa there, we use that rongoa. Over the years, I've had many cups of kawakawa with students and visitors to our campus. I just want to ask, how are you all doing right now? And do you have any questions?
Stop sharing, Da.
It's not a question, Fire. It's just I just like that photo of you at WOMAD. And it looked like you were at looks like you were at One Love, really.
And we were there, Johnny.
Yes, yes, we were.
Does anyone have any questions in regards to contractual agreements from tupuna? I just want to say I'm very used to thinking at and looking at things from a maintenance plan perspective, because in effect that's exactly what that contract is. That was my great-grandmother looking at me as her maintenance plan. And they did do things like that. All I had to figure out was, what did I owe her in time in regards to the two kete, whakairo, the piu-piu and the korowai she had made for me. What did I owe her in my time for that? I figured, because I realised it was the 5-year-old who actually wanted to be a logging truck driver, not the 7-year-old who was contracted, the 5-year-old. And so I decided I would give 5 years per taonga to carry on the mahi of my kuia. And whānau, that time is up. I think I have fulfilled her aspirations, because a lot of things happened within those 20 years. A lot of things have happened. Specific changes are here. And holding the mauri of those changes. What a privilege that has been. And so I just want you to know, all our tauira who are online, that contractual agreements took place when you were 7. Political hui took place. They started when you were 3. You didn't wait until you were all grown up and gone and acquired a tohu. They took place when you were little so that you can hear the kōrero of your tūpuna, understand why they think the way they did, why they said the things they did. And what they had, what their hopes and aspirations were for you. So when you think about the signing of the Treaty of Waitangi and all those tūpuna who were there at the signing, chances are they were all going to political hui when they were children. Chances are they would have heard the hopes and the dreams of their tūpuna. They would have been able to ask the questions as to why they thought that way. So that futuristically, they were able to sign a treaty on behalf of all those yet to come. Maintenance plan, they were the maintenance plan for their tūpuna, just as I am a maintenance plan for mine. And some of our students, I've already said, I'm already looking. Who will the maintenance plan be for the future? And it's from those ways of thinking and understanding.
Okay, so
Kia ora. Kia ora, Viv.
aloha mai.
Or fire.
Tēnā koe he mum, I'm thinking of your mum right now.
You know, I think you're absolutely right at that. You know, in terms of that, interconnectedness in those in the ahua that you showed us. You know, at that elemental level, and the whakapapa and the genetic resources, and that resource is not quite the word, genetic taonga, that all encompasses, and those voices that have to be spoken by our tauira, you know, they're the representation of those taonga. And you see that, you know, it's quite disturbed that when funding doesn't come to like Unitec or the Polytechs, and it's funneled into so-called higher learning like the universities, that it misplaces or denies that those voices that our tauira, our rangatahi hold and should be carrying for us, and you know, as a representation of our tūpuna and of our taonga, our whenua. So this is what I'm hearing loud and clear in your presentation, Whare, and in your kōrero. And you know, I love that you know, that the kauai, you know, your moko kauai is a representation of your whenua and of the, it's just beautiful. So it's not so much a question that I wanted to say, but it just, you know, it's gratitude in what you've said, and to be able to remember that, you know, the reason why we, you know, we're so, you know, we need our students, our tauira, to understand that they're not there just on their own bats, doing their own thing and doing the, you know, go out there and get a nice car and a nice house and all the rest of it and look good, that they're actually representing far more than they'll ever know right now. And so that's all I want to say with that, Whaea Lynda. Tēnā koe.
Ngā mihi. And you know, child poverty. One of my mokos, when he was 11, their whole class had a discussion on child poverty. And he talked about how, especially the Māori students, the Polynesian students, the refugee students within the class were questioned about their thoughts on child poverty. And right at the end, his teacher asked him what were his thoughts on child poverty. And he had to say that he didn't understand what she was talking about. And then he proceeded to tell her that although he's, you know, he lives at home with his mum, and his mum is a solo mum, they have their own house, they live behind Nan's house, and so that is their townhouse, that they have a beach house, a tree house, a mountain house, and then they have tupuna whenua that you have to go through a tunnel to get to the beach, another tupuna whenua where you have to open 17 gates to get to the beach, another tupuna whenua that sits up on a big hill. He says, I've only been there once and I'd like to go there again. And then we have our marae. This is a marae where you can see the whales jumping, a marae that you have to cross the river on a boat to get to, a marae that's by the railway lines, and a marae that's surrounded by caves. And he says, so no, I don't know what child poverty is. That's not to say that it doesn't exist, but what you introduce to your children determines their thinking. And for my moko at 11 to be able to talk to that is something I would love all mokopuna to be able to talk to like that. Pepeha, the importance of pepeha. And when mokopuna are able to understand the value of pepeha, then we can understand what that thinking is likely to do for our future. And this is coming from mokopuna. And so our whare Wānanga may not necessarily be the same as they were when I was growing up. You know, our first lesson was in astrology. I usually did this presentation, all the photos on a blanket, because we were given a grey blanket with red stitching when we started school. And the message that came with that gift of the blanket was, you are going to hear things about us that are not true. And once I started to learn about history, and I heard that my people gave their whenua away for a blanket and a few trinkets, I knew exactly what my kōrero was meaning. And so we all got one of those blankets. And often when I go to international conferences, I will take my blanket and put my photos on my blanket, because the tangata whenua of those nations, doesn't matter where in the world, they get it. Because they would have all heard the same conversation when colonisation hit their whenua. And that was how my kōrero prepared me to learn about the history that was coming through, that I was going to learn. And a lot of it isn't true. It's from a certain perspective. And so one thing I will say in my time at Wairaka, at the Whare Wānanga of Wairaka, how appreciative I am of all those tūpuna who had a hand in introducing te noho kotahitanga principles there. I'm not surprised of all the institutions in the country that I could have ended up at. I ended up at te Whare Wānanga o Wairaka. I don't think I would have been able to handle an institution that wasn't forward in their thinking into introducing mātauranga into their lessons. Whānau, at this stage, does anyone have any questions that they want to ask?
It's probably not a question again, Whaea, but I can relate to your kōrero about being contracted. My young cousin, Rawari, he grew up in the era of kohanga reo, and he was actually schooled when he left the Cape to come to Auckland to go to Rutherford. So I relate to what you said about your contract by your kuia. Young Rawari was also, well, so to speak, contracted to do what he's doing, and to have done what he accomplished while he was up here in Auckland, and now he's in Parliament and the co-leader of the Māori Party. So yeah, I can relate to how people can, your tipuna, or your whānau, can actually guide you into where you need to be. And your kōrero about being the driver of the logging truck, of Ngākau Mahaki, your logging truck is quite brilliant. Quite brilliant, Whaea. So that's all I have to say. So it wasn't really a question. Yeah.
Tēnā
Kia
koe.
ora tātou.
And it's interesting when she said that, when she said that she would get me my logging truck, she also said I would have to work with Te Aroa Waka. Well, thank you, Te Aroa Waka, for carving those beautiful logs. And I have to say, I really enjoyed spending time with Scotty as my kaiako. And he was there. And even with our timu, both have come from Te Aroa Waka. And, you know, I'm not surprised. I want to acknowledge all our whare Wānanga, our whare Wānanga tāwhito. I mentioned before that astrology was one of the first things you learn, because when you're little, you're still connected. You're still connected to your atuatanga. And I can remember I could have been 10, maybe 10, and they were, scientists were still doing the research on whether or not there was a seventh planet. And very interesting, because I had already been learning at a much younger age that we actually belong in a 12 system universe. And so just thinking about the knowledge of our tupuna and understanding their sciences that haven't even scratched the surface yet. I'm excited about the possibilities of how Te Pukenga is going to influence education in the future. And I'm not even surprised that they chose that name, given our whare Pukenga on campus. You know, that whare is full of kōrero, and they're actually like guidelines. When you walk into that whare, and for those who don't realise, if you're there at nights, you're actually sitting under the stars, because all the lighting system have been placed specifically to represent our star systems. And then there's this whole process of our po tupuna who are there. And although the water's not running, I look forward to hearing the reo of our wai within that whare. And although the names have, well, not all the names, but most of the names have been removed from above the doors within Pukenga, that whare talks about things from the beginning of a journey, of a student's journey, until they come out and share their knowledge and their skills with the communities that they belong to. And so if I have to think about how can Wairaka assist Te Pukenga I think a wānanga on our whare pukinga might be a good place to start.
Hi.
You know, and those taonga were instilled into that whare by people who still thought that same, they still thought that way. Their education was old education that came from the whenua. You don't learn those things within books.
Atahua. Tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora whaia. Tēnei te mihi atu kia koe. Thank you for sharing your kōrero with us this evening. I'm looking at the time. We have 3 minutes, and even though we started late, we're going to finish on time. But so if anyone else would like to have a quick kōrero to whaia before we close.
Aroha mai. I was so looking forward to coming in on time, but I had a little bit of an emergency, and so the whānau came first. But the minute I had that finished, I come diving up here to even to hook on to the last 2 seconds. But just a mihi to you. Lovely seeing all of you there, and in particular for me, it's wonderful to see kia ora, Hare, and to you, Gus, and to you, Whaea Lynda. You know, the stalwarts of our whare at Unicheck, and I think that's an amazing pātai to send out to Te Pukinga, the rōpū. Come hear that kōrero and get that grounding so that things will even be more tau than what that it currently is, because it's certainly is a very, very big journey that's going to happen. So very, very wise words, and so not surprised. So he mihi aroha kia koe for being he tāre and e Ngāti Tūreiti.
Kia ora tātou. I'm getting a call, kia ora whānau. My dinner is ready.
Kia ora, Mary.
Ia te kia koe whaia, mo tō kōrero o hoakene mai kia tātou, and acknowledge all those people who've had sad news.
Aye.
All those who were involved and are connected to what happened at Linmore. And shout out to aroha to those who are still in hospital.
Mm.
I think if I could sum up your kōrero, Lynda, we just, and I'm going to refer this to Gus, because as really an acknowledgement of what you have just shared, is really to acknowledge Jenny, Tony, and Gus in the manner and in which they have been acknowledged by Te Pukinga for the kōrero, for the kaupapa that those 3 carried for us. And as you were doing your kōrero, I'm thinking, oh, kia ora, ka pai, ko hora here was a huge beginning from our marae, from Noho Kotainga, and all its values. And obviously the thinking that the Puking has got in its response to Doug shared, that Gus shared with us. So thank you for that, Gus. I really enjoyed that. And in terms of what we can now look, hopefully, forward to the future, because it's not just our students and staff, but it's all students in tertiary and in universities and at all schools, the challenges that they've had. Whānau, it's been lovely to see your faces, those ones that I haven't been able to see. Love to see you, Viv, coming back. And ka mihi atu nei kia koe, Darlene, mo tēnei kaupapa nāu I whakarite mo tātou. Tēnā koutou, kia ora mai tātou.
Enjoy your dinner, matua.
I shall do that.
Mihi atu kia whaia, Mary.
I will. Kia ora.
Nā mihi kia koutou, tēnā koe mātua,
Kia ora.
tēnā koe Whaea. I wanted to come tonight, Darlene, me. I wanted to come into this story because I have such amazing respect for that wahine. She's fabulous, and she is Tonga, and it's just wonderful to hear you share tonight. I think for me, some of the takeouts, I've taken this long list of, and I'll need someone to translate it for me. I'm sorry, Mātua, this will be my rail journey will continue. I'm sorry to do that to you, but I've got so many questions. But for me, what I took from it was the importance of handing those gifts on and handing the tonga on. And I'm sure we'll find a way to hand these precious gifts to Te Pūkenga to make sure that all of the stories of Wairaka are kept, but more importantly, they're shared and they're passed on, so that future students can share them and enjoy them and then pass them on. And I think that's going to be really important. As a Pākehā, that's something I regret, is not understanding my ancestry well enough. But it's wonderful to hear others share theirs, and I think the ancestry of Wairaka is going to be really important as we join Te Pūkenga, that it's never lost, and all of the principles of Te Noho Katahitanga are shared as well. Anyway, I'll stop there because I don't want Mātua to go hungry. Nā mihi kia koutou. Rinoa e te whare. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora.
Kia ora Gus, kia ora tātou. Me inoi tātou, ka wehe atu tātou, i raro i te rangi Māori, te hari koa, i te manua nui, haumi e.
Kia ora. Kia ora.
Ora.
Pō Māori e.
Right.
Oh, that sounded so wonderful, Darlene. Gosh.
Well done, lady.
Stop
Yeah.
we can stop recording it. We recorded it, Uhana, so we can
Oh,